There is a quiet moment that happens to some people later in life. It usually appears when they try to learn something new. Maybe they open a book that once felt too complicated. Maybe they start an online course. Maybe they simply decide to understand a subject they ignored for years. And then a small question appears in the back of the mind. Is it too late for me to learn this? The strange thing is, that question feels logical. We grow up hearing the same message again and again. Learning belongs to the young. Brains slow down with age. Curiosity fades. But reality keeps contradicting that belief. Some people begin learning entirely new skills after 50, languages, instruments, technology, even completely new careers, and sometimes they learn faster than people much younger than them. At first, this seems impossible, but the reason has almost nothing to do with intelligence. The real difference is something most people never discover when they are young. A simple learning structure. A structure built on two elements, a pillar and a playground. Before those words make sense, it helps to understand why learning often feels difficult in the first place. Imagine someone sitting at a table late at night. The house is quiet. A laptop is open. A notebook sits nearby. They have decided to learn something new. At first, the curiosity feels exciting. They watch a few lessons, try a few exercises. But slowly something changes. The information begins to feel scattered. One lesson introduces a concept. Another jumps ahead. A third assumes knowledge that was never explained. After a while, the mind starts feeling crowded. Not full, crowded. And this is where many people quietly stop. Not because they lack ability, but because the brain dislikes chaos. When information arrives without structure, every new idea requires effort just to understand where it belongs. Many people assume this friction means they are bad at the subject. Others assume they started too late. But the real issue is simpler. Most learning systems teach information before they teach structure. And the brain needs structure first. This is where the first part of the method appears, the pillar. A pillar is not a large amount of knowledge. It is one central idea that organizes everything else. The brain naturally searches for patterns. When it finds a strong pattern, learning becomes easier because new information has somewhere to attach. Think of walking into a library where every book is scattered across the floor. Even if the books contain brilliant ideas, learning would feel exhausting. But once the books are organized into sections, the mind relaxes. A pillar works the same way. In psychology, the pillar might be understanding that human behavior often follows patterns of reward and prediction. In language learning, it might be realizing that sentence structure carries meaning more than individual words. In music, it might be recognizing that rhythm forms the backbone of everything else. Once the brain finds a pillar, something important happens. Information stops floating. Ideas begin connecting. Learning becomes clearer. But a pillar alone is not enough. A pillar without experimentation becomes rigid. This is where the second element appears, the playground. A playground is simply a space where mistakes are allowed. Children learn quickly because their entire world is a playground. They try things constantly. They fail without embarrassment. They experiment freely. But adult learning environments often remove that freedom. Tests appear. Judgments appear. Performance begins to matter. The brain becomes cautious. And caution slows learning. What many people rediscover later in life is something children already know. Learning accelerates when curiosity replaces performance. This is the playground. It might look simple. Someone practicing a new language with imperfect sentences. Someone experimenting with photography without worrying about perfect results. Someone studying psychology and casually observing everyday conversations. These small experiments change how the brain approaches learning. Curiosity creates repetition. Repetition builds skill. Skill builds confidence. And confidence leads back to curiosity again. The cycle becomes natural. This is why the combination works so well. Without the pillar, learning feels scattered. Without the playground, learning feels rigid. Together, they create something surprisingly powerful. And there's one more reason this method works so well later in life. Experience. When younger people learn a subject, they mostly collect theories. But someone who has lived decades already carries thousands of real examples, conversations, conflicts, relationships, patterns of behavior. When they study something like psychology, those ideas attach to memories. Abstract concepts suddenly become real. Learning becomes less about memorizing and more about recognizing patterns that were always there. And this leads to a quiet shift. The learner stops asking, "Can I keep up with younger people?" A different question appears. What patterns have I been missing? Once the brain begins looking for patterns instead of isolated facts, learning becomes smoother. The world itself starts reinforcing the knowledge. Conversations reveal ideas. Books clarify experiences. Daily observations confirm what was studied. The pillar organizes. The playground experiments. Life provides the examples. And the small doubt from the beginning begins to fade. Is it too late for me to learn this? That question assumes something incorrect. It assumes learning depends mostly on speed. But deep learning rarely comes from speed. It comes from structure and curiosity, from pillars and playgrounds. Once those two elements exist together, the brain begins doing what it has always done best. Understanding, and understanding has no age limit. Sometimes it even becomes easier when the mind slows down enough to notice the patterns that were always there. So if you ever decide to learn something new and the doubt appears again, try something simple. Do not rush to collect information. First, look for the pillar. Find the one idea that organizes everything else. Then create the playground, a space where curiosity matters more than perfection. Give the brain structure, give it freedom, and see what begins to grow between those two spaces. Because the ability to learn never truly disappears. Sometimes it just waits for the right way to begin again. And if this idea felt familiar to you, if it reminded you of your own curiosity about how the mind works, then you may find other conversations here worth exploring. If so, you are welcome to stay.